Awesome. I'll go to the next slide. Yes, as Arun mentioned, we have 4 experts in the field who are going to give us some insights and tools and tips today. The first that you'll hear from is Ed Erisman. Ed is a research chemist in the Mass Spec Data Center at NIST, working primarily on collecting and evaluating EI mass spectra of forensic interest. Prior to joining NIST in 2020, he was a forensic chemist at the DEA Chicago laboratory for 10 years, analyzing submitted drug evidence for the presence of controlled substances. Following Ed, we'll have Gary Mallard. Gary was at NIST for 31 years, working in fire and chemical kinetics research, chemical kinetics, thermodynamics, mass spectrometric, and retention indices databases. He was the first editor of the NIST Chemistry Webbook and the group leader for the Chemical Reference Data Group, which produced the NIST Chemical Webbook and the NIST Mass Spectral Database. He was one of the teams led by Steve Stein, who worked on the development of AMDIS and developed extensive training materials for AMDIS as well. After retiring from NIST, he went on to the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, or OPCW, as the head of their laboratory. After 3.5 years at OPCW, he retired again and now works as a consultant with NIST on methods to improve AMDIS, quality control of the NIST Mass Spectral Database, tools for forensic analysis, and extensions to AMDIS. In addition to that, he continues to work with OPCW on the database used for the analysis under the treaty, as well as with other clients on GCMS analysis. And then after lunch, we'll hear from James Little, who is a consultant with Mass Spec Interpretation Services. James initially worked at Eastman Chemical Company in Kingsport, Tennessee for over 20 years, after which part he started his own company, Mass Spec Interpretation Services. His specialty and passions are in the identification of unknowns, employing EIGCMS, LCMS-MS, and organic chemistry. His hobbies include sailboat racing, cruising, electric cars, duplicate bridge flying, and he has a website, A Little Mass Spec, and sailing. Then our final speaker, our final expert for today will be David Sparkman. David Sparkman is the director of the University of Pacific Mass Spectrometry Facility in Stockton, California, and also an adjunct professor of chemistry. He's been a contractor to the NIST Mass Spectral Facility for over 25 years. He teaches mass spectrometry courses for MassSpecTraining.com. He's taught courses in mass spectrometry for over 30 years for the American Chemical Society, as well as several of the international mass spectrometry conferences, and has held seminars on the interpretation of mass spectra for many law enforcement agencies. He's authored 4 books on mass spectrometry and published over 200 articles and book chapters in the field, and probably has the most extensive collection of mass spectrometry literature that exists. And so what we will do, we're going to, I guess we're way early, but we will move on to Ed Erisman to give a presentation. But at any point, feel free to use the chat feature in BlueJeans to ask some questions. And what we'll typically do is we'll allow our panelists to give a 30-35 minute talk, and then we'll bring the questions in back at the end, have them clarify anything that was a little fuzzy, and answer any questions that you might have. At any point, any questions come up after the fact, you feel free to contact Arun or myself. Our emails are up here, and we'll put them up at the breaks at the end of the day as well.
Actually, sorry, Ed, before we move on to Ed Erisman, maybe we should ask if David is on, if he can explain to people how they can find the Mass Spec Library.
Sure.
Well, Arun said on the website there is a list of registered distributors. The NIST library is distributed and sold by all mass spectrometer instrument manufacturers, and they sell upgrades as well as existing copies. There are a number of third-party distributors that have various enhancements, such as one providing the MONA database in conjunction with the NIST Tandem Library. Many of these have FTP sites where you can pay for the library through with a credit card and then download it through a secure FTP site. The other thing about AMDIS reads many of the conventional type data files, such as those from Thermo Fisher, from Agilent, from Perkin-Elmer, and if it does not read the file, it will read what is called NetCDF files, and all instrument manufacturers of GCMS instruments can export their data as .NET-CDF files.
Awesome. Thank you, David. So yeah, I don't know. Ed, should we move on to Ed Arisman right away?
I think so. No?
Okay. Yeah.
Unless you want to, the only other thing I could think of is, since we're trying to keep this informal, was if you wanted to, the only tool you did not cover was the fentanyl classifier. And I don't know that anyone else will discuss that. So maybe you want to discuss it.
That's right. And so actually that's one thing, maybe from this presentation, I made it seem like in the Mass Spec Data Center, we only do commercial or production scale tools, but we also do a ton of research. And so we have some research grade tools for working on specific problems. And so one of the things I've been working on is what's called the fentanyl classifier, where I have taken some ideas from the hybrid search as well as some ideas from MS Interpreter and kind of put them together in one kind of package that allows you to identify fentanyl analogs that differ from a fentanyl by 1 to 2 modifications. This tool is available on GitHub. So this is research tool, so it's not a clean product of the way some of the other tools that we'll be talking about are today. But we have I have several, and it's not just me, several people in my group have research grade tools that one can also potentially use in your, and often those tools will also come with technical manuscripts that you can also look at. And they should all also, again, be on chemdata.nist.gov, but if you don't find them there, you can send us an email, and we can help share some of those tools as well.
Yeah, I would say let's move on to Ed.
Okay. Ed, are you ready?
Yeah, let me just share